Now we're going to look at the components of a good, comprehensive, balanced scorecard report. We'll start by following the framework of service, effort, and accomplishment reporting. And this starts with the basics: our objectives, measures, targets, and initiatives for how much effort it takes us and how we accomplished our outputs and our outcome goals. Then we want to do a little bit of simple math with the inputs and outputs and outcomes so we can assess our efficiency. How much input did it take to get our outputs and our outcomes? And then we're going to place all of those numbers in context. And this is the part I really want to emphasize now. First, there are many comparisons that we want to make that go far beyond just looking at cost versus benefit. We also want to look at baselines. So how did we do relative to last period? How did we do relative to our competitors or our peers? Okay, so many comparisons should be emphasized in a useful, effective report. We also need to discuss unintended effects. So every time we have an initiative, every time we work to improve our performance on one objective, we may well alter outputs and outcomes on other objectives, measured or unmeasured. All right, they might not even be part of our balanced scorecard, but we should discuss those. Okay. We also need to be talking about the various effects outside of our firm and inside of our firm, the influences that are altering the outputs and outcomes we're able to achieve. Okay, so how did the economy change? Were there changes, maybe a new competitor came in and made it much harder for us to retain market share? We'll want to talk about those as well. Maybe there's a big new demand for our services. And then finally, and most importantly, we need to have a narrative, a story that ties together all of the information. A good report tells a story. Now, storytelling can get a bad name because your story may not really be a faithful representation of what happened. But I'm assuming that you are sincerely trying to craft a careful explanation and a persuasive document that will convince people that your understanding of what happened, why it happened, and how you should respond is correct. The framework I just talked about came from cgov.org, an independent nonprofit organization that really is dedicated to improving government reporting from the inside, from people closely associated with governmental agencies and governmental reporting. But we can also look at some additional advice that comes from the outside, from a government watchdog group called the Mercatus Center at George Mason University. And they emphasize a few more points that are very useful to keep in mind as you think about what makes an effective report. It should be accessible and readable. Can people find the report? Do they have to hunt it down? And when they get it, does it speak simply and directly, or does it obfuscate? Are the data verifiable? And more importantly than that, does the report discuss the limitations of the data? Remember, every system is imperfect. We've discussed that as a running theme of this course. And so you need to think about what limitations in the data are making your measures imperfect. Hey, if you don't talk about that in the report, people will wonder what you're hiding. And finally, the report should tell a story that links inputs to outputs and outputs to outcomes. It isn't just what happened, but how did what people in the organization did affect what happened? Without that story, you'll never get people to respond and improve the organization.